right? And it can be overridden by the higher brains, but you have to know that and practice that higher brain functioning. So, well, as a result of what happened to you, your brain imprinted survival strategies to deal with it. These are like, and that they're like thoughts, they're complexes of thoughts. So, if for you external chemicals become the solution, then substituting less toxic chemicals or less toxic brain reward often becomes the strategy. So as an example, if you're into meth, okay, meth was designed as a weapon of war to support soldiers killing people and inducing a killing rage and sustaining it. That's what it was designed to do.
Wasn't it started in
Germany and Japan.
Hitler, yeah, didn't Hitler?
No, it's before Hitler.
Really?
Turn of the century, 18th to 19th century. Meth was discovered in the late 1800s.
But they gave it to the soldiers.
Yeah, and we gave it to we give it to soldiers too.
Still?
Yeah, today.
You shooting?
I am not. I don't have to make things up. Okay? Methamphetamine, Adderall, that's pharmaceutical methamphetamine, is given to kids, ADHD kids, and pilots. As an example, okay? B-2 bomber. There's a B-2 wing at Whiteman Air Force Base. That's actually what it's called. It's in Minnesota, right? They were bombing Kosovo. B-2 bomber cockpit is not big enough to have a coffee machine in it, so they give them methamphetamine. Yeah, well, you want to be awake for the 14-hour round trip, right? And you don't want to be peeing necessarily. So, you know, so what if the drug makes you a little paranoid? It's not bad being paranoid driving a $500 million aircraft into enemy airspace, right? So they theoretically rotate you off every 2 weeks so you won't get strung out. But yes, methamphetamine is still used for pilots, military, and kids. Sorry to break that to you, but
that's
yeah.
shocking to me.
No, it's about the Benjamins. Come on, and that's a meme too. I'm just saying, look, there's no point in playing good drug, bad drug games. Okay? Marijuana was a U.S. pharmaceutical drug up until 1938. It was taken off the market not because people died from it, but because other people wanted to make money, and they used essentially race as an excuse. Oh, it's those minorities that are using those drugs, or, you know, I mean, this is literally, did I tell you guys this? Well, here's the meme, right? Harry Jacob Anslinger was a top drug cop who was a friend of Joe McCarthy's, you know, the anti-communist Joe McCarthy. Okay, he's a top drug cop, and Joe McCarthy is a junkie, strung out on morphine. Anslinger is he's the top drug cop and supplying a U.S. senator with morphine. That would be illegal because you're not a doctor. But the reason he's doing that is he doesn't want communist drug dealers influencing Senator McCarthy because he might blackmail him, right? So he testifies before Congress that, and I quote, "coloreds with big lips seduce white women into having sexual relationships using marijuana and jazz music."
Oh, I remember you saying that.
Okay? And that's congressional testimony, so it's, you know, in the congressional record. And that led to the Marijuana Tax Act, which basically didn't make all the marijuana products illegal. It just taxed them. And eventually states made them illegal. And then use of marijuana illegal. So wait. Black guys seducing white women using weed and jazz music. That's a public health problem? So then they basically used that to do surveillance about anybody that hung out with black jazz musicians. Anybody. As well as, you know, applied that to political people too, like in the civil rights movement, et cetera, et cetera. They're communists. Okay, so that's a meme. So our drug policy isn't always driven by a public health problem, and things are often made illegal not because there's a actual crime problem, but because we want to control specific populations. Not my opinion. It's a legal opinion. I mean, I read the congressional. No way. They didn't. Really?
I just watched that play that they have down at the Ace or whatever, the Reefer Madness.
Yeah,
play.
right.
I had no idea what that was before I went to it.
Yeah.
And I found out that was actually a movie.
It's
the
actually a
government
movie. You
put
can
out.
get it. It's on YouTube, I think.
It was completely hysterical.
Yeah.
I'm like, is the government really that?
Remember,
Put it.
a meme does not have to be true. It's successful or not. All right? So when I'm talking about, in terms of hands-on, a meth addiction becomes a sugar, caffeine, and nicotine and little or no food addiction. Okay? Those things are less toxic than the meth, but they're not healthy. And they still give you a rush. So that's what I'm talking about, especially in your things that make you go, papers, right? You give something up for a less toxic one, and notice how hard it is to give up sugar. It's like everywhere. Oops, I didn't eat all day. I'll have a Snickers bar. Oh, I was supposed to give up sugar, but oops, my bad. Right? So if external chemicals become the solution, then substituting less toxic chemicals or less toxic brain reward. So again, meth being the external chemical, then less toxic but still toxic, sugar, caffeine, and nicotine, or little or no food. So they're not using meth, but they are not nutrifying their bodies and actually causing stress, not living. So this is not the same. That substituting one addictive pattern for another is not the same as living healthy, which would be the stronger meme. That's what you would counter with. So if you're used to stressful living for long enough, then that becomes normal. So changing towards a more healthy pattern becomes abnormal, and it feels strange at first, and it feels uncomfortable at first. So then you would need to install a meme where I'm going to do the uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. It's kind of like working out. Trying to work out in the beginning, it's like, oh, you're sore and all that, I don't want to do it. Later on in the treatment class, we actually look at the physiological reasons for why that happens. There's actually chemicals that actually induce a state that, oh, I don't want to work out, and I do want to eat more, even when I'm not hungry. It's neuropeptide Y, I believe it's called. All right? So it's uphill until it becomes the new normal. That is, you have to change your chemical and energy diet. Okay, so not just through diet and exercise, but also change your thought and food for thought, what you take in or consume, in terms of a mental diet that affects your mood. So that's in terms of looking at less toxic memes and going towards creating healthy memes. What's at the center of it? What is the addiction? Remember, if addiction is a goal-oriented behavior, what's the goal? And if you're going to move towards health, what is the goal there? Okay, so you change your game plan, your meme plan, your script to something more optimal. So, for example, a little poetic, turn your avoidance into a void dance. That is, you're out in space, experiencing the beauty of the universe. So meth addiction is an addiction to intensity. I'm basically stealing a line from Angie's book. You confuse intensity with living. The drug simulates being in crisis instead of being calm and centered in a crisis and reducing the crisis. Meth addiction basically conditions your mind and body into an addiction to intensity. Now, when you're in an intense situation, you don't necessarily feel. You shut down to get through crisis. I mean, this is actually part of the emotional skill that makes me being able to be a professional, but not necessarily a good grandpa. Okay? I can handle crisis because I can just shut down my fear and just, okay, calm, cool, collected, let's triage, let's do this, let's do that, next step, hold on, wait for it, now go, calm down, right, all the while I'm feeling, what if they do? Quiet, calm down, just watch them. So in crisis, I just tend to shut down. For any kind of crisis. What are you feeling? Feeling? What does that have to do with anything? Let's just get the job done. So, drugs are feelings and processes are feelings. So, substituting candy, chocolate milk, caffeine, cigarettes, high protein, simply extending a meth high, for example. So, I'm just using this one drug as a meme for just showing you how these things can be intense. So one of the things you notice with meth heads is they often, while they're on meth, because of what meth does to you, they'll substitute sugar, or they'll only consume sugary things, or chocolate milk, caffeine, cigarettes, and high protein, rather than if they eat it all. And then once they get off meth, since that was the pattern for their diet, that's where they continue. And basically what the sugar and all that other kind of stuff does, puts them in kind of like a bipolar state by itself. Sugar high, depression. Eat out of the sugar low, high, depression. Right? So if you haven't paid attention to the emotions that drove you to meth in the first place, then you, like, what is the rush and how do you get it without using a damaging drug? And that could be, so looking at that particular drug, even the rush. So you can get rushes from, shooting opiates, and a lot of times what people are actually looking for is not so much the rush of the drug so much as the ceremony of using the drug. The ritual preparing, an injectable drug for shooting is more of the attraction for them than the actual high that they get from the drug.
My sister got hooked on meth and she shot up, and she moved to California with her boyfriend, and she said that because she thought she was more addicted to the needle than she was the drug, because she had a bag but she didn't have a needle, and she held on to it in her dresser for like a week waiting to get a needle because she didn't want to waste it.
Right.
And I was like, how is that even sane?
How that is sane, not sane, it's a meme, okay? There's a ritual, okay? And so part of what, there's a couple of different memes for understanding how that's working, all right? So one of the oldest ones in Western psychology, very controversial cat, but accurate. Thomas Zaz. And his book, among others, he wrote several books called Ceremonial Chemistry. By Thomas Zaz. Now, it's out of print. I have a version from like the 60s that I still have. What Zasa's thesis was this. He was basically for decriminalization, which, given the time that he's writing it, was actually pretty radical in the 70s. But he's basically saying psychologically people crave order and ritual in their lives, and they feel that just working is not enough. They want some kind of sacredness or transcendence. And sometimes they're getting it through these substances in a way that's more tangible for them than going to church. And so it's the ritual of using that attracts them more than the high they're getting from the substance. I mean, he was saying that in the 70s, based on fairly firm psychological principles. I mean, fortunately, I can use these stories because there's enough people that go through this that I don't even have to identify. I'm not going to identify people anyway, but yeah, I have seen people go from the ceremonial use of meth, right? And they've been clean, or they're working on, doing their 3 years of clean time. Okay, I'm giving up smoking weed, right? Because I used to like the whole ritual of putting the bubbler, or if you're a joint roller, or whatever, that whole ritual of putting it together was very similar to cooking your dope, drawing it through the cotton, etc., the whole ceremony, right? To doing something like weed or doing something like mushrooms. Like, oh, the room's breathing. Yeah, okay, right. And it is, but there's a reason why you feel like that. So you could actually feel the room breathing by like sitting down and breathing. But, meditation. Okay, you could do that. I mean, basically all the drug is doing is altering your neurotransmitter balance. You could do that by yourself, given the right technique. So, give them the right technique. And that becomes a ritual too. All right, so ceremonial chemistry. The concept is, what kind of rush are you looking for? And part of the piece, the cure to the rush is in its opposite, because remember we were talking about enantiodromia the other day as a meme. The cure to the disease is in the disease. The cure to the rush is in its opposite. Slow down. Stealth, not speed. Slow down. To cop that line from Angie, pay attention to what has heart and meaning. What are you feeling? Obi-Wan says, reach out with your feelings, Luke. Let go. So, slowing down. So, again, speed, doing too much speed, slow down. Smoking weed to medicate your anger, take a look at your anger, make it into art. Express it. Not by destroying things, though I suppose chopping wood could be useful. All right, slow down, pay attention to your body's wisdom or your own wounding, and apply the correct healing. So, for example, if there's a splinter, this is a metaphor, but an actual splinter, take the splinter out. So if it's a glass splinter, make sure you get all the glass out, because blood will obscure it. And is there still pain? Had that happen. You actually had the wound close up and there's still a glass splinter, and it hurt to watch, right? So had it taken out, because it's like in my heel. Personal, family, or multi-generational trauma, even if you don't know its causes or the entire story, you can read its effect in grief, guilt, shame, and how it is medicated. Alcohol, opiates, etc. You can actually tell what the feelings are. And this is actually a technique we teach when we train drug counselors. You can actually tell what the feelings are by the drug they're using. Alcohol and opiates are usually used to medicate some kind of shame or pain. There's often, frequently, some form of abuse that is driving the alcoholism, like they've been abused or they've been hurt. So personal, it happened to you. Family, it happened to those related to you. Or multi-generational trauma happened to your folks. So even if you don't know the causes or the entire story, you can read it if you know what to look for.